The Boox Note Max promised to finally bring the 300 ppi resolution to the 13.3-inch size segment, and now it's finally here. So let's quickly check it out in this first impressions video while I'm working on my full review. Make sure to like and subscribe to not miss that. When taking it out of the box, I was actually surprised that it didn't feel as heavy as I feared it would. Besides the tablet itself, there's the pen and some paperwork in the box. The 5 replacement nibs and the folio came separately. So back to the Note Max, and taking it out of its paper wrap, we're greeted with a very familiar design. With its bezel colors, it looks very similar to the Boox Go 10.3. Putting them side by side though, there is no mistaking them. The Boox Note Max is huge and aims for that A4 format that's almost the same size as the 13.3-inch e-ink display. The build quality looks very nice with maybe a hint of a gap at the top edge, but I'd say that's already going into nitpicky territory. What's most noticeable compared to the Go 10.3 are the flat sides, which makes the Note Max feel a bit more like an iPad. With 4.6mm, it's much thinner though. I'd say the choice going for flat sides makes sense here because the Note Max is a tablet that you're not going to hold in your hand a lot when using it. But handling the Note Max is actually still pleasant because the grip area is wide enough to get a good grip, and also because the tablet is actually slightly lighter than specified, roughly 600 grams instead of 615 grams. Just a small difference, but worth noting. One of my initial reservations with the Note Max was the use of a glass-based e-ink Carta screen, instead of using a flexible Mobius line. A bit of background information in case you don't know that already. Typically e-ink screens are built on a glass back plane, which can crack when being dropped or applying too much force. The flexible line of e-ink displays sits on a plastic back plane and are more durable as a result. As a user, you don't notice the difference in everyday use, but when it comes to longevity, the flexible Mobius screens are generally the better option. But when trying to flex or bend the Note Max a little without trying to break it, it feels very stiff. So at this point, I'm not too worried about it taking damage this way. Because of its size and weight, I also suspect it will sit on a desk most of the time, because carrying around the 13.3-inch tablet simply isn't as comfortable as the 10.3-inch devices. The reason why Boox went for the regular glass back plane is most likely cost. The Note Max is $649 or 699 euros, which of course isn't exactly cheap, but it's also not especially expensive for that screen size. The older Tab X with the flexible Mobius screen and a front LED cost much more, $230 or 250 euros more to be precise. So I suspect Boox tried to bring down the price as much as possible to make the 13.3-inch tablet more accessible to a wider audience, which is probably also the reason why it ships with the cheaper Pen Plus and not the Pen 2 Pro, which I would have preferred. Let's dive a little deeper and talk about screen brightness, because there's a bit of upset regarding the subject already. The Note Max has an e-ink Carta 1300 display with a 300 ppi resolution and no front LED. Because of that missing front LED, background brightness is important for a comfortable reading experience. Having these two side by side, you'll notice the Go 10.3 screen is slightly brighter than the one on the Note Max. Doing a very crude non-standardized brightness measurement with the setup I'm using to film, the Go 10.3 has an L-star value of around 80 to 82, and the Note Max a value of roughly 78 to 81. L-star is a measure of lightness, which represents how bright or dark a surface appears, from 0, black, to 100, white, based on how much light it reflects. It's used to describe brightness in a way that matches the human perception. So we are talking about roughly a 1 to 2% difference between the Note Max and the Go 10.3. I'd say that's a pretty small difference, but I'd look into it in more detail in my full review. I just want to point out one important thing, and that is that there's always a bit of variance with e-ink displays. Even within one model line, you will find small differences. Because of manufacturing tolerances, that's to be expected to a certain degree. And over the last 15 years of testing ink devices, I've seen this countless times. I'm not saying that there aren't certain models that can be better than others in general, but slight differences are to be expected even within one series, so don't be surprised to find a bit of contradicting information on different devices. Okay, so back to the Note Max. After turning it on and completing the initial setup, there was already an update available with an interesting changelog, which mentioned improved ghosting behavior. In case you don't know the term, ghosting is when faint traces of previously viewed text or images remain on the screen after changing the page. This is normal for e-ink, but some devices are more prone to it than others. And that's really the first thing I noticed with the Note Max. Ghosting before the update was really bad. What you're seeing now is after updating it, which is still not great, but definitely better. At this point, I'm actually inclined to believe that ghosting on recent Encarta 1300 screens is generally more obvious than on other Encarta generations. I noticed it first with the Boox Air paper, then with the Bigme B1051, more recently with the Supernote A5X2, and now with the Boox Note Max. All of these use Encarta 1300, and compared to other Encarta generations, I find ghosting more noticeable on all of them. I look into this in more detail in my full review, but suffice to say, the ghosting on the Note Max is more pronounced than I would have suspected. Boox is obviously already aware of it after issuing the first update, but I also asked them about it and was told they'll continue working on reducing ghosting. Since the first update already reduced it considerably, I'm cautiously optimistic that they can improve it further, but we'll have to wait and see, so stay tuned for the full review. On a more positive note, the Boox Note Max's screen size is awesome. For the most part, Boox scaled the user interface to the bigger screen, but adapted a couple of things like the control center to better fit the larger screen. The Note Max uses the tablet-like launcher, same as the Note Air 4C recently got. Where the Note Max unsurprisingly really shines is with reading PDFs. When cropping the page margins, you can actually read A4 documents in their original size, which is awesome for academic papers and of course other large format documents as well. And thanks to the crisp 300 ppi resolution and the various enhancement options, even small text is sharp and contrasty. So aside from the ghosting, this is a really great experience if you want to read documents without having to zoom in. And of course you can also annotate directly on the PDF page or use the dedicated note-taking app for that. The larger screen also gives much more room for your notes, which I suspect will turn out to be pretty convenient. Another super useful function on the larger screen is the split screen feature. I always found the 10.3-inch tablets just a bit too small for splitting the screen. Out of the box, without really having used it yet, I'm pretty sure it's more convenient on the Note Max simply because you have much more screen estate on here. Putting a PDF on one side and a notebook on the other definitely makes sense here. One last thing that's interesting to note before coming to an end and continuing my work on the full review are the e-ink viewing modes. The Note Max has Boox Super Refresh technology, or BSR. And with past devices, that always meant we get specific e-ink viewing modes for that super fast screen refresh when needed. For some reason, that's not the case on the Note Max. Here we only get the HD and the faster A2 mode. The A2 mode is actually something we've only seen on non-BSR devices in the past, so that's already surprising on its own. But other refresh modes we'd usually find on non-BSR devices are missing here as well. So just 2 modes instead of 4. I asked Boox about it and they assured me that it still got BSR, but didn't elaborate on why it's implemented differently with the e-ink viewing modes on the Note Max. But the Boox Note Max still seems to benefit from BSR when it comes to pen latency at least. Without having measured it yet, it feels a bit quicker than on the Boox Go 10.3. So that's either a result of having a faster Snapdragon 855 SoC or BSR, or both. So writing feels snappy, and thanks to a paper-like texture, which is very similar to the Go 10.3, also very nice. Okay, so that's it with the very quick first impressions of the Boox Note Max. I'll take a much closer look for my full review, so like and subscribe to not miss that. Thanks for your time watching, and I'll see you in the next one.